So yeah, starting with your earpiece, Trevor, we can look at some surfacing I explained to you here. I just thought of this recently too. So this is, sorry, a bit of a tangent here. Modern SolidWorks, at some point, they changed all of their icons to blue and white because I think they thought it looked better. Show you guys this now as an option. If you go to settings, and I believe you don't have to do this, but I'll just offer it and go to display. I think this is where it is. Probably should have, nope. Okay, I'll have to look this up and come back to this. Let's see, there you go. System options, colors, icon. Here we go. Here we go. So, okay, it's under system options, colors, and then from icon, there's classic. And the reason why I want to show you guys this is, so this is what I'm used to because this is how I learned SolidWorks. This didn't occur to me until like just this week that the modern icons completely got away from, it went to a 2-color system where this used to be a 3-color system. And you'll notice the third color is orange that they added in here from yellow and green. And that's actually really helpful semantically because all the orange colors have to do with surfacing. So like if you're married to the blue and white and you're used to it, I encourage you to stick with it because this might throw you off a little bit and make it harder to find things. But as we get into surfacing, like that's kind of a nice color to you to be aware of. Yeah, I'll show you guys again. If you go to the gear and you go to its system options and go to colors, you can switch back and forth under icon color from default and classic. So yeah, to just again start here with this earpiece as a good intro to surfacing. So kind of a cousin of surfacing is this thing called curves. This is when you put in the surface toolbar, which I think most of you have by now, but again, just in case you don't, if you go to tools and go to customize, I realize I keep going down tangents, and look at toolbars and go all the way down to surfacing and just check that. You should get this toolbar on the left here. So again, that was under tools, customize, toolbars, surfaces. But what I want to point out is what comes with surfaces is this other mini toolbar called curves. Curves are, I don't know how to describe them. They're like similar to sketches in a way, but they're kind of just adding like split lines or, man, I've never had to explain a curve before. Like it's literally just, if I take a look at this product here right now, these tangent lines are curves. Okay, so it's kind of like, and I don't know, I don't have a formal definition of it, but based on like my best attempt at this, is kind of like taking a tangent line, or a tangent line is a curve. So it's like, it's kind of like if if 6 surfaces make a cube, then 4 edges or 4 curves make a surface. I don't know if that makes sense. It's kind of like the edge of a surface. That's the best way I could describe a curve. Or again, in mathematic terms, you can think about a line as a curve and then a plane as a surface, and then a solid body as a, geometric form. So a very simple curve command is split line, which is what I recommended to Trevor to use here. The way a split line works is it literally inserts a tangent line, or kind of these like surface body lines, onto faces. So what I had him do was make a sketch that was an offset of all of these edges, of this whole edge, this like bent noodle. And then using the split line command, by picking faces that you want the sketch to be applied to, it applies this line onto this face. So again, if I roll back and forth between this command, you can see it goes from being all smooth to having this inset here. Now, the reason for that, basically what we did is we took this face and we split it to get us different surfaces. That was in order to then offset, use a surface offset command to pick just the center. So again, we have this nice gap here, which is mimicking the object he was studying, and then using a surface cut command. So using this surface that he created to then push into the object by a certain depth, and that's how he was able to get this kind of like clean split line all the way around on this like surface that has a bend in it, as opposed to just doing a cut. He could then do the same thing. He could surface offset on the bottom and then thicken this without merging it. And now he has essentially two separate bodies in here. So I think I showed that to some of you, but again, it's all about split line surface offset, using that to push and pull in on something. Are there any questions on that technique? Okay. A question Anad asked last week was like why surfacing over solid bodies, and so I used this drill as an example. Surfacing allows for more control over the loft. Is often how often when you're into surfacing, you're typically like doing lofts, and again, I'll show you a couple different commands that we can use. But a loft is like you're asking the program to blend two different shapes, and surfacing gives you just a little bit more control, and it lets you focus on a single sheet of paper as opposed to like a solid body, which can be a little bit more complicated for the loft to take place. So I use this as an example here. We'll drop down to this surface, this loft here. I'm going to remove all the appearances just to kind of get away from this, or to like get away from the distraction of this. But what I want to point out right here is, can we all see that there's this seam line here, right? Let's say we wanted this to be smooth. We could take this solid body loft, edit it, and tell it to be tangent at the start and stop of the loft. But you'll notice when I take this second tangency, it fails. It's basically asking the loft to do too much more than it can handle. And that's partly because a solid body loft is a closed shape to a closed shape. So in this instance, it's kind of like a pizza pie, or sorry, a pizza slice, quarter of a pie chart, from this one to this one. With these guide curves. If instead I decide to do a surface loft and roll back here, again, I can go to my surface toolbar on the left, pick lofted surface. Now instead of a closed shape, I can just pick edges or curves, depending on what it is I'm working with. And now if I give myself some constraint curves, so like match this edge, and now if I tell these to be tangent, it should be more forgiving. So here what happened, it picked the wrong face. It's being tangent to the inside, but it's kind of crazy that it still is able to kind of find a solution there, at least to me. So if you click next face, now I have the one that I want to blend it to. And now if I check mark this, you can see we get a really smooth blend through there. So before when we were trying to do a solid body, it couldn't figure it out. But because we simplified it and we made it just one face, it makes it easier for the program to solve. There's more control over a surface face. The best way that I can explain that again, I'll repeat it in hopefully slightly different words, is a solid body loft is going from a pizza pie to a pizza, or pizza slice to a pizza slice. Whereas a surface loft is going from a quarter circle arc to a quarter circle arc. If you want to talk about it mathematically, it's like SolidWorks has to solve in one instance 3 different lines and how to blend them, and in another instance, 1 line and how to blend them. So obviously with the program, the 1 line is going to have more control and be able to calculate and be more smooth through that. This is, again, just my words, and the best way I can I just know through experience that surfacing has a lot more control and a lot more fidelity to it and more robustness to it. It's a little bit extra work, but the program handles it better. And that's my best guess why. Someone who actually made this program may know more about that. The other way that I would explain it too of what's important is like as designers, we don't care. I mean, we do kind of care what's going on the inside to make sure it holds the guts and the components. But like we don't care what this interface looks like because it disappears, right? It's all just in there. All we care about is what this outer shell looks like. So why would we sacrifice, the loft of the outer shell to make this interface work at the same time? So when you get to really complex forms and stuff, it's very common to do it all in surfacing because at the end of the day, you don't care what the inside looks like as long as as long as the volume holds the guts. Sorry, I'm oversimplifying. I'm just approaching design purely aesthetically at this point. Of course, there are times you care about what's on the inside in terms of like if it's a container or something, but oversimplifying and generalizing from an aesthetic standpoint, you only care about what's visible from the outside. And that's where you focus. Okay, long intro to say that this is why surfacing is important. Yeah. Good question. So yes, you bring up a good point. Right now, this is literally just a face. It is not a solid body. We will complete our surfacing by turning it into a solid body. So to answer your question directly, there is a command here called thicken. And this can turn a surface into a solid body. I won't merge this. Thicken is actually it's not a bad command, but it's not a great one. But now, yes, now you'll notice this is now a solid body here. If I suppress this command, you'll notice now that there's no body here, but there is a surface body, and it's there. So that's like a direct answer to your question. There are better ways to go about it, though, than using thicken, and this is where I want to work together and show you guys some of these basics. So, all right. Hopefully you guys all have this downloaded and open. Now we can, again, hopefully work together in such a way that it's a little more engaging. So I'm not just talking at you guys. Okay, so back to project one. Just let's look through this file real quick as a recap. You'll notice that there is a photo of the olive oil bottle. There is a master sketch that is coincident to the origin here. I want to show you guys this new feature that I haven't talked about. It's useful sometimes, not always, but you'll notice something interesting about this sketch, and that is this is all grayed out. This is something called a sketch block. So let's say the way that I have used this most often is for logos that have been like imported from, I don't know, this is my imaginary logo, that have been imported from Illustrator. If you select all of these, and you'll notice that there's this thing that says make block. I think if you also right click, that should come up. Yeah. What this does is it keeps all of these sketches now grouped together relative to where they were. So if I double click on this, I can edit the block and you can kind of see these adjustments. The reason why it's not typical to use it in this instance is because someone editing your file, it's kind of like another step that they have to dig into your sketch to edit, and that can be problematic. The reason that I used it here, and again, I set this up just to smooth things out, but I want to explain why I did things, is that now if I go to the side master, this is the exact same block. I actually copied and pasted it, and because it's the same block, a change in one block will mimic a change in another. So to illustrate that, let's see, this may blow up, but if I take this down here and I turn this to 2 inches, it tells me it can't do it. Let's turn this back to 108 or whatever it's at. Or let's try turning this one up to 2 inches. I want something more obvious. Oh, that's why. I'm going to take this bottom one and turn it to 3. Right, so do you see that change? It's now super wide on the bottom. You'll notice that that same change was made here on the front. So, and again, when you do have a sketch block, actually, when you do have a sketch block, you can simply select, copy and paste it from one sketch to another and have it mimic. So I think here, if I select it and then Control C, Control V, there's my sketch block. Okay, again, mainly used for like keeping logos together and stuff. The only reason it's used in this instance is to mimic one sketch from one side to another. And now that I've ruined this, I will just not save this and reopen it so we all have the same thing. Any questions on sketch blocks? Okay. So now as we roll through the file, there's a shoulder master and a base master. We'll talk about that in a minute. Just some new planes for where the footprint is and where the shoulder is. The shoulder is just below the neck of the bottle. I built in the cap here, so we all have it. Nothing should be new there. But essentially, how we're going to build this, we're going to start with a loft. Now, again, it is possible to build this bottle with solid body lofts, but we're going to use it for learning surfaces. So again, to just speed it up, I've already copied some of these sketches over for us, so sketch 17 and 16. So we're actually going to start here. So to begin with, we're first going to try a loft without the guide sketches of 18 and 19. And again, just to kind of look at it and talk about what to do. So hopefully everyone has their surface toolbar loaded on the left side here. We're going to go ahead and click on lofted surface. And now what this feature tree or feature property dialog is asking us is it's saying, okay, what profiles do you want to loft? And because it is a surface, again, it's like a piece of paper, it's asking for edges. Again, in this instance, I went to the master sketch and I copied both of these sketches over, sketch 16 and 17, of just the outer lines. So for the profiles, we're going to select sketch 16 and then sketch 17. Now, depending on how your guys defaulted, if it's similar to mine, clearly there's no loft happening here. Anyone want to guess why that is? That's kind of the correct answer, but it's possible to fix it without guidelines. And I'm also now, sorry, go ahead. So there is something in this window here that is indicating what's going wrong. And the reason I'm posing this as a question is I want you guys to be able to recognize things like this when you have trouble in SOLIDWORKS. It is that diagonal line. It's confused because it thinks it's trying to blend this corner to this corner. Whereas logically, we want this top corner to go to this top corner. So Anad, your first answer was not wrong. The profile sketches would fix that, but I can fix it by grabbing one of these vertex points here and dragging it up, and now it fixes that. I'm also realizing now, as I look up, that this is we'll roll with it. Yeah. Okay. So that is one thing to pay attention to. I don't know what this thing is called, but it's kind of like the loft alignments. You'll also notice that this loft, if I spin it this way, right now it's just a straight loft, right? It's if we were to complete this, this would be a very square bottle. So again, before we get into these guide curves, we can play with the start and end constraints. And if we change them both, here we don't have any tangency because this is a sketch. Tangency in a surface loft will only be to a surface or another face, okay? And again, it won't show you that option if it's not there. If it's a sketch, The equivalent to tangency is something called normal to profile. The term normal means 90 degrees too. And you'll notice if I select both of those, we now have our loft coming 90 degrees off of the sketch plane where that sketch is located on. You'll also notice that as we look at, we have our settings in here, we have some numbers, it defaults to 1. If we type a 2 in there and a 2 in here, you'll notice it pushes this out. It makes that tangency grow longer. Or really, to be more accurate, the normal to profile setting happens over a longer transition. So kind of a lazy way to model would be to solely rely on these numbers and just kind of punch them in until you get it to something that looks close to the model you're trying to make. Sometimes that's okay, but better than that, honestly, is to use guide curves. The reason for that is you then have a sketch that you can actually dial a value in and change, and it will update. It also corrects issues like Anad mentioned, that there's no guide curves for our loft. Selecting those guide curves with these lines misaligned would have corrected that. Let me see if I can demonstrate that for you guys. So I'm going to misalign these again. Now if I go to guide curves here and I select sketch 18 and sketch 19, you'll see it fixed that. And again, if I only have the top sketch, you'll notice that it just follows just that top sketch. We also want the bottom one, sketch 19. Now, in an ideal world, you kind of want everything. Not only do you want the guide curves, but you still want this setting to be normal to profile. And the reason for that is, without setting this normal to profile, you may still get kind of like a visible seam in your loft. Anytime you're working in a half or in a quarter, if you want there to be a tangency among that face, you should choose either normal to profile or set it to tangency, one or the other. It's very common to, if you're modeling an object in half, if you forget to do normal to or tangent, even with guide curves, it is common to end up having a visible seam in your product or your object, and that's something you do not want. Okay, so I just threw a lot at you guys, but here to just summarize and what the settings should be. Your profile should be sketch 16 to 17. Your settings should be normal to profile. You can leave the default at 1. In fact, putting in 2 or 1.5 may over-define the loft and cause weird things to happen. But you also want guide curves of both 18 and 19. You'll notice that actually if you look down here, it's possible to make these guide curves tangent as well if need be. In this instance, we don't have that need. So if you have all those settings, you can go ahead and click the check mark. And now you have a very clean surface loft. That's, again, it's just like a sheet of paper. It's lofting one line to another line as opposed to one shape to another shape. So there's less edges for SOLIDWORKS to worry about. It's a lot more of a high fidelity command. I forgot to mention this, but you'll notice that for efficiency's sake, I've addressed it, but just to emphasize and point it out, we are modeling a quarter of the model. And again, that's for efficiency, so we don't have to worry about, the loft can happen on across a smaller area. We don't have to worry about doing something multiple times. Of course, we will end by mirroring this model twice to get it to be a full model. Okay. The next thing we're going to do, so if you recall back to like the early days of this class when we talked about these solid body features, how I mentioned that for each positive feature there's a negative one. So for an extrude, there's an extrude cut. For a loft, there's loft cut. All of these commands have a surface equivalent. So we just saw that. We have a loft surface, there's an extrude surface. I guess there's not an extrude cut surface, but there is a cut with surface. So there's a lot of similarities, and hopefully that adds some familiarity to it. So the reason I bring that up is, like I've showed you guys revolve in the past, there is also a revolve surface. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to create a bit of the neck finish, and this should be sketch number 20 in here. And if we go ahead on the left side here and click on revolve surface, I guess it gives us an error because it says what plane do you want to revolve on? So I'm sorry, first, I'm going to close this door. I thought it would bring up that property dialog, my mistake. If you click on Sketch 20 and then click on Revolve, that should work. Yes, okay, cool. It defaults to revolving this kind of, and again, this was just convert entities from the master sketch. I'm just saving us that step. It defaults to doing a full 360-degree revolve. However, because we're building this model in quarters, we want to change that setting here. So in this 360-degree revolve, we just want to change this to 90. Degrees, not rads. And mine is not visually updating. Let's see if I, nope. There we go. Hitting tab should update things, force update. So you can see now it's going the wrong way, right? I want this to revolve a quarter in the same direction as the same quadrant that I'm building in. So I can reverse the direction by clicking this icon here and have it revolve 90 degrees corresponding to my surface down here. Is everyone with me? Does that make sense? When you have that 90-degree rotation in the right place, you can click the check. And now I want to show you guys a new technique. But before we do that, we need to convert entities, some sketches. I, for some reason, neglected to set this part up. So on the right plane, we're going to create a new sketch. So I'm going to select the right plane and hit Alt-S as my hotkey to create a sketch. I'm going to hit Alt-V to make sure my sketches are visible. If you can already see sketches, you don't need to do that. Or again, that's under View, Display, or sorry, Hide Show, and Hide All Types. It's like the master switch. And what we're going to pull, I'm going to pull these two lines here from the side master. Again, it's the line connecting the shoulder to the neck. And I'm going to click on Convert Entities. And then I'm going to exit that sketch. I'm now going to do the same thing on the front plane. So I'm going to create a new sketch on the front plane. I'm going to hit Alt-S. I'm going to select these two lines, this arc and this line from the front master, or the main master, and click on Convert Entities. They should turn to black. We're on the front plane. So yeah, again, to just talk about what I did. So I went to the right plane, created a sketch on there, pulled the arc and the line connecting the neck to the shoulder and clicked on Convert Entities and then exited that sketch. I then went on the front plane, Alt-S to enter a sketch dialog. Click on the front master, copy this over, Convert Entities, and exit out of that. So I want to show you guys, again, another technique that is sometimes useful. Sorry, I'm deleting these because I have them 4 times. So everyone should have these 2 sketches. In this instance, given the simplicity of what we're doing, this is not necessary. But I just want to show you guys another technique just to be aware of, okay? Sometimes it is not uncommon. I'm trying to think if I can verbalize. When you're building in halves and quarters, sometimes it is beneficial to make a surface from a sketch to get a tangency from a face. It can be a little bit more robust than having the sketch be normal too. And it can give you a little more control. Sometimes you need to it gives you a surface you can modify. So this is kind of an extra step that, again, in this instance is not necessary, but it's a good thing to be aware of. So what we're going to do is these 2 new sketches we took, we're going to click on each of them and we're going to extrude them into little surfaces. And we're going to have them go the opposite direction away from our quadrant. And again, the length doesn't really matter. The default that I have is to 0.1 inches. That's fine. I'm going to click check. I'm now going to select the other one I did. And again, go to extruded surface. It's on the top left here. So again, I select my sketch. I go to extrude here. I click on this. And again, we want to go away from our quadrant. and click check when you have that. And now I'm going to click on Alt V to hide all of our sketches so that now all we see are just these surfaces. Again, in this instance, what we have done now is a little bit overkill, but taking a sketch and turning it into an extruded surface gives you a little bit more fidelity and control when you're trying to get a very smooth blend and loft. This is often more useful when you're doing something complex, or for some reason, like your normal 2 sketch is still giving you a seam. This will give you a little bit more success. It's an extra step, but it's a little bit better. All right, does everyone have something like this? Are we all caught up? So now I'm going to introduce a new command. And again, just like I'm introducing you guys to different levels of surfacing. Like surface loft is useful on a basic level. This is the highest fidelity of surfacing, is this thing called boundary surface. It is very similar to a surface loft, and in fact, you could think of it as a surface loft. What differentiates a boundary surface and a surface loft is you can think of, if a surface loft is between line A to line B, a boundary surface is from line A to line B going this way, up and down. But then if you have lines C and D on left and right, it's also a loft going that way. So it's kind of like a multi-directional loft that gives equal value from point A to point B and from point C to point D. So like to point it out on the screen here, if we were lofting, this would be a simple loft from these 2 curves. And it would treat these 2 curves with like the main focus of the loft. And we could use these, again, these edges as sort of guides for that loft to happen. A boundary surface treats these 2 curves, and then now if I select these, and again, we'll work together to do this, but I just want to make a point, so I'm going to do this really quickly. Because again, I think this will be easier visually. So we have some color coding here. We have yellow and purple. A boundary surface treats yellow and purple with equal value. It gives them the same amount of focus and weight. Whereas a surface loft would focus mainly on the yellow and the purple would just be the guide. So like, I don't know, that's the best way I can put it in plain English. Like, you know, if you think about this, what we're doing here, it doesn't matter whether you loft it bottom to top or left to right, but a surface is kind of a loft is one direction, whereas a boundary surface is 2-directional. So a boundary surface has more fidelity, more control to it, and gives you a more, really the like summary is that a boundary surface has more control and gives you a higher fidelity surface. So again, with the first demo, that simple loft from 2 sketches, that's kind of a basic, it's less steps, there's less things to select, it's a little bit quicker. What I'm showing you guys now is something a little bit more in depth, that if you're trying to do something more complex, that you really want everything to be smooth and blended, is the technique that you would use. Okay, so let me undo this and we can, I'm sure you guys were able to follow along and do this by yourselves. Okay. So again, the way to approach this, so let's say you did select it, if you right click and say clear selections, maybe that's another way to get all back on the same page. So I'm going to start with direction 1. And again, I'm just going to click on the shoulder here, which is all one surface. And then I'm going to click on this inner portion of the neck here. And so mine's straight, but I know, Mari, you're saying yours is twisted. Let's see if I drag this. So here's the other thing that like a boundary surface allows you to do. This line, it kind of like can cut your blends short. Again, it's just there's more fidelity to it. I don't know why yours was twisting. It's suddenly working? Okay. Here you go. There's a pink one and a gray one. And maybe that's why it was twisted if these were crossed. But again, a boundary surface just gives you a little bit more control. So with a single lock, you had only one of these. Now there's 2. The next thing we're going to select on is direction 2. And again, this is something I think I've talked about before and done before, but good to recap or good to emphasize if you guys are not aware of this. Direction 2, you'll notice that there's 2 edges that we want to select, not just one. And the way you do that is you go to click on one of these, right click on one of these edges that you want, and scroll to Selection Manager, which is 3 from the top. And now it brings up this little dialog box. The setting should default to these 3 arrows here. And what this does is it allows you to select multiple edges and have them be treated as one seamless edge. So again, I'll do that. I'll repeat that. I went from the yellow dialog box to the purple dialog box. We're now looking at this neck blend. I'm going to right click on here on this highlighted orange edge. And I'm going to say Selection Manager. And I'm now going to click on both the bottom line should already be selected because that's what I right clicked on, and then this top line. When that full line is purple, I'm going to click on the check mark. And now I have one guide on the left side here. I'm now going to do that again on the right. I'm going to right click on this long curve, hit Selection Manager, click on this vertical line, and click the check mark. It should. No, that still works. That method works for both. Again, there's a lot of similarities between lofting and boundary surfacing. And really at this level, like, honestly, we could totally do this with a surface loft. Boundary surface is more useful when you're doing like just very complex blends. This is a very basic blend because it's like similar lines to similar lines, similar curves to similar curves. When you get like, if you're trying to blend like an S to like a C and it's over like a long range and it has to follow a blend, like that's where a boundary surface would make more sense. I can pull up a file after this and we can look at some reasons why you would use a boundary surface. Maria sense frustration. So is everyone kind of at this part here? Does anyone need me to repeat any of this? Okay. This here? Okay, so hopefully everyone's here now. And again, we're in a boundary sketch. You know, we've selected the top and bottom. So now we're just going to add some settings to these, all right, to make sure that we want it to blend. So here we want to select we want to look at our edges here. If you'll notice that as I click between these two, like hopefully this is clear, but this edge gets thicker. Watch when I click on edge 2, that edge gets thinner. That's how you know which edge it's referring to. It kind of like highlights it by making it thicker. It has like a dotted line on the outside. So for me, I want to pick edge 1 because this is the one I care about. This one I don't care so much about because it's underneath the neck and it's hidden. This is the one that's very visible. So I want to click on edge 1, and here I want to take this and I want to go tangency to face. And it will highlight the face that is tangent to in blue. Again, let's say there's a face going to the left here. That might be an issue. I don't know why I just got an error. I think this defaults to 0, which is fine. You can pump it up to 1 if you wanted to get that to be a little bit smoother. Sometimes I leave it at 0. Depends, again, on how smooth you want this to be. So 0 or 1, that's fine. These ones here on the side, same thing. We want to select each of these, and we want to make these tangent. So this goes tangent to face. And again, it gives us tangent to face now because we took the time to create a surface. And again, the tangent to face is a little bit more robust than normal to profile. They essentially mean the same thing. One's for an edge with a face or a surface. One is for a sketch. And again, we want it to be tangent left to right because when we mirror this all the way around, we want that to be seamless. We want that to be nice and smooth. So once we have those 3 tangencies set, you'll notice also it adds that word to the edge, so tangent. And again, it's on the bottom here and then left to right. We could now hit the checkbox. The one thing I just want to mention is there's another option called curvature to face. This is very rarely used. You can think of this as like the next level of tangency. It has a much more strict rule of what constitutes the level of smoothness. There are some designers that I've worked with that advocate for using this as much as possible because it gives you the absolute smoothest blend. In my opinion, it's overkill and it's going to give you more headaches than it's worth. But that's totally debatable. I just want to mention what that is. So again, tangent, tangent. Yeah. Click that checkbox. And now we should have a nice smooth blend. Again, if we turn off our lines here, just by our lighting, we can hopefully see like how smooth that is. But now essentially we have 1/4 of the bottle modeled. We just don't have the bottom or any of these other sides. So we want to start to now put the bottle together into a solid body. There's different ways to go about this. I will show you the way that I would approach this in this instance, but then we'll talk about another way. So you'll notice here, if I just hid my cap, turn my tangent lines back on, that now at this stage we don't really care about these ears. Again, these were just used for giving us a little bit better blend fidelity. So I'm going to select both of these under here in surface bodies, holding down Control to select both of them, and click hide because we don't need those anymore. And now you'll notice that we have 3 surfaces remaining, but these are the ones we care about. There's a command called knit, which can blend multiple surfaces together. It can make 3 surfaces as one, provided that they're all touching on an edge. There's some rules that it follows. But you'll notice that this surface is it's very seamless, right? It goes all the way through here and runs all the way down. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on this knit surface. It always looks like a little vest to me. And now it's asking, hey, what surfaces do you want to knit together? We could simply go here now in our feature window or our body window and click on the 3 surfaces. It'll highlight all of them yellow. And we can now just hit this check mark. And you'll notice now if I roll in my tree back and forth, you see now this is a black line there, and the edge of the surface is a blue line. If I roll above this knit, that black line changes to blue because now that's an edge, it's a gap. By putting that knit together, you'll also notice that now this is all one surface up here. So it's kind of like merging the surfaces together. We will use knit again in a minute. So the next thing we're going to do now is we have 1/4 of the surfacing of this bottle. We now want to mirror this to make this into a full bottle. We could actually, another way to do this would be to do a circular pattern and do 4 of these, and they should align. That's one way to do it with one command. But we're going to do this with mirrors just because it's a little bit, I think, makes more sense in my head. So I'm going to select the front plane here and click on mirror, or you can click on mirror first. You'll notice that mirroring, we clicked on the feature mirror. There is no surface mirror because you can mirror surfaces with the main feature mirror. Does that make sense? I feel like I just said mirror a bunch of times. We are using the main feature mirror. There is no specific surface mirror command because you can use this main feature to mirror surfaces. So again, I'll click on that. I have the front plane selected. Now here we want to select on bodies to mirror. Again, might be a little bit confusing because this is not a body. It might be tempting to click on faces, but no, in this instance we want to click on bodies to mirror. Because this is all knit together, it treats it as one sort of entity. So maybe if I'm being a nitpick, I would say that SOLIDWORKS should change this terminology to say entities to mirror maybe, or bodies and / or surfaces to mirror. I've selected that, and now I'm going to click on the check mark. You'll notice that it gives you an option to knit surfaces. You could do that. It would actually save a step in theory. So under options here, we could uncheck all these other ones and just click on knit surfaces. So merge, you'll notice it says merge solids. This is not a solid. So if you leave that, I mean, we could leave it checked. It's not going to do anything. The propagate visual properties, if this is a red surface and you mirror it, it will make it a red surface in the mirror. That is a very buggy feature in SOLIDWORKS. If you keep that checked, often the mirrored object will never lose whatever color it is given, and sometimes that's frustrating for me. So I often uncheck that. So again, really we just want to knit the surfaces, click check, and now you'll notice we have this black seam line, and again, we still have one body here. So again, this is one way to close your surface off, is if you're modeling it in half or in a quarter, you can mirror the surface and then knit it together to get a solid. So we're going to mirror again, this time on the right plane. So again here, I'm going to select the right plane. I'm going to go up to my feature mirror. Under bodies, I'm now going to select this new merged surfaces, these new merged surfaces. And again, change my settings to knit surface and click on this checkbox. And again, double checking what we have here. Now we have this nice big surface. You'll notice, however, we do have a gap on the bottom, which we will address. Just like everything, there's multiple ways to address this gap. I will show you guys, I don't know what the more correct way to do this is. There's like an easy way and a slightly harder way. The easy way, and like showing you guys a new command, is a filled surface command here. So you can click on this. And what this does is if you have like a gap in your model, so again, like this base here, it brings up this property dialog box where now we can select these edges all around our gap here. And you'll notice when you select the last one, it does a bit of calculating, and it gives us a flat surface across that face. This is kind of like a quick and dirty tool. You can use it to patch holes and stuff. You'll notice that you can also change the settings. It defaults to contact. If I select all of these and change them to tangent, we can see what happens. Let's see if we can flip the tangency. No, I don't think we can. Anyway, you can blend things tangentially. There's like a hole that you want to be blended with a tangent. But again, in this instance, we just want it to be contact. It's just the base. And click check on that. Just for the sake of showing you guys the other technique, another way to do it is with a sketch. So in this instance, I would want to make a sketch on the footprints. So I'm selecting my footprint plane, Alt-S. Same thing here. I'm going to select these edges. I'm going to right-click and say select tangency, and that selects all these edges on the bottom. I'm now going to convert entities to get that to be a sketch. And now I'm going to use this command. It's called planar surface. Whatever shape you have, it turns it into a surface. So in this instance, it's like a rounded square. Click on planar surface and click check. And you'll notice I got a flat surface from a sketch profile. Two paths to the same end goal. If I have to kind of give an honest answer, I think the sketch surface plane is a little bit more robust, but fill surface is perfectly fine. The problem with fill surface that happens sometimes, here's the main difference between the two. Surface plane or planar surface will give you absolutely a flat face. There will be no bumps in there. It is possible sometimes with the surface fill for there to be a slight wobble or bump through the middle. In this instance, it's a very clean surface, so I'm confident there's none. Depending on the complexity of your object, it's possible that that happens sometimes. Okay, we now have a top surface and a bottom surface. There's no windows or gaps. The final command is to knit them together. So again, we're going to select the vest on the left here. We are now going to select our main body and our bottom face. And now here is a new box we want to check, is create solid. You want to check that. If you are knitting surfaces that encase air, that have no gaps, that make everything closed, and hit that checkbox, provided you have no gaps and you didn't forget any windows, you now have a solid body. And that's how you get from then that flat sheet of paper to now a solid body that you can now cut. So now if I, just to make a point, take this front view, extrude cut through here, you'll now see that we have solid body in there and we can edit it. So often with surfacing, at some point you transfer from surfacing to a solid body that you can then do some of these commands like fillets and stuff. You'll notice that if I try and drag this cut before the knit, it cannot cut the surface. There is no solid body in there to cut. If I try and fillet this, it's not, I mean, it's an edge, it's not going to fillet that. It should fillet this though, however. You can fillet on a surface. What that does is it gives you a fillet on the inside too. All right, cool. Are there any questions on anything? So again, just to like reiterate the new commands, it's basically surface loft. Some of them are very simple, like surface revolve or surface extrude. Boundary surface is a little bit more higher fidelity. Knit is used to combine surfaces and is used as the ultimate command to translate a surface into a solid body. You want to translate to a solid body in order to cut away, remove, add fillets and stuff like that. Cool. Any questions on anything? Okay. That's the demo then.